What about you, Stacy?
The first church that I attended to was called Full Gospel. So yeah, they spoke in tongues and very Pentecostal. And then I met a lady who said that she had the gift of healing. A couple of people actually, so they would lay their hands on people to heal them. Um, there was nothing miraculous that took place, but people would get better. And then I only I know one other person who has a gift of discernment.
And what would you consider a gift of discernment?
A gift of discernment is basically when you see an individual, you pretty much know all of the actions that that individual would take of any possible situation that they would be put in. So it's basically really knowing an individual. So in other words, people don't surprise you. And it's not just looking at human nature in general. That's not what really gives you the discernment. There's
It's
something,
individual.
it's individual, completely individual, because we'll all do different things under different circumstances.
I was working out at the Y about 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and I bumped into a guy and somehow got to talking about Jesus, and he's like, yeah, we have a church and we've seen miracles, gold dust, and we've seen limbs grow back, and what else did he say? He says they just go from like house to house. They don't really have like a church building. So I thought that was interesting, and I reached out to him, but didn't really hear back. I reached out just yesterday or a day or two ago on Facebook. His picture popped up, which was kind of interesting. So I don't know. That's only been my experience. And then I went to this other church one time, and this lady came out and she started speaking in tongues, and another guy stood up and said, "Here's the interpretation." It was kind of strange.
Why do you ask, Matthew? What are you thinking?
No, I was just looking at recently some debates on the topic because Rochelle has a patient, very young patient. Most of our patients are older. This guy is like 20, in his early 20s, and he's a Christian, and he's telling her that she needs the baptism of the Holy Spirit.
I see.
So,
So, in other words, she needs to exhibit an outward sign to show an inward thing. And, you know, it's like, what did the Jews always do? They always sought for a sign.
for a sign, right. Yeah, so, and Rochelle knows the Bible pretty well, but not to debate someone like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it says somewhere that the Holy Spirit was just a guarantee until, like only for a limited time. Like it was there for a reason, but only for a time until he returned.
You have to take your full preterism lens off, though, when it's referring to Matthew and Rochelle.
I can't do that.
Yeah, I take that.
Eyeballs are permanently fixed.
Yeah, I take that to mean that we have the Holy Spirit we have now as a deposit.
Right, you think the same thing. You just think it hasn't happened yet. That's all.
Right.
We're in agreement. It's just the timing is off. And we don't know what time it is anyway. Is it really 2019? No.
There's a very good debate that I watched with anybody know who J.D. Hall is?
I think I've heard the name, but no.
Yeah, J.D. Hall. He was on the cessationist side. He's a Calvinist. And he debated this other guy who I don't know, who's a pastor. And they both did a very good job presenting their points. But I had to obviously go with the cessationist argument.
Why? Because it was more convincing, or that's just what you believe?
He was more convincing, but it is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, when it talks about, Paul gives instruction on it, but what he's really doing in 1 Corinthians 12 is rebuking them for being childish and
Right.
fleshly. And he basically says, I would rather speak 5 intelligible words in the church than 10,000, words nobody can understand.
So even though the First Corinthians was written to the Corinthian, I think it has a seriously modern day application for the Pentecostal church.
Absolutely. It sounds like he's writing today.
Mm-hmm.
So even if, at the very least, even if this thing with tongues and other gifts was for today, it seems like no one's doing it correctly. Not even close.
Well, I mean, though, yeah, speaking in tongues to me isn't like somebody being like, just like coming up to you and being like, and just saying, be like, you know what I just said? Like, I don't know what I just said. It's more like, like, let's suppose I'm in a room or in a whatever, with a whole bunch of other people from a whole bunch of different other nations, other languages.
It's
They're
so
talking to me in their languages, but I understand them. It's like, wait, how can I understand you? I definitely don't talk the same language as you. Like,
it
what?
is so out of balance that you're focused on tongues and not Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Not unlike, Seventh-day Adventist, where they quote more from Ellen G. White and her writings than they actually quote from the Bible.
Some people do that with John Calvin.
My experience, they'll quote John Calvin, but they may not necessarily agree with what he says. But if you were a Seventh-day Adventist and you mention Calvinism, they're going to think that a Calvinist looks at John Calvin as a divine prophet like they look at Ellen White.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked my pastor, who's a Lutheran pastor, why is it that you guys believe in free will? And here Luther wrote this bondage of the will, and he was dead set against it. And my pastor looked at me and he said, well, he was smiling, but he said he didn't speak to other Lutherans when he wrote that.
So is that how you see it too, Matthew? The tongues that it's just other people's languages that they're understanding. They're not talking in gobbledygook or anything. Right?
Oh yeah, there is no gibberish in the Bible. It should be translated as language or languages.
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense.
Seems to me, though, that there might be two separate meanings of tongues, two different types of tongues. I haven't looked into that myself, but
Well, that's what they would do. They would say, an unknown tongue, where that's really kind of wrong, because at Pentecost they were speaking in known tongues because they were identified. I mean, it clearly says in the scriptures, these people are speaking in Phrygian and Latin and all these different, tongues. So they were all identified. So when they say in 1 Corinthians, where although if I were to speak in the tongues of angels, and then they go, oh, see here, there's a heavenly language. And so when we're speaking the language of heaven. We're above you measly earthlings because we've got the Holy Spirit and we're speaking the heavenly language. It's not unlike, the Calvinists in their ivory tower saying, well, I'm the elect. It's just, well, anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox with this denominational crap.
Mm-hmm.
But when Paul says what remains is faith, love, and hope, he's basically saying all of these other things will cease. Now, the question is, when does he say that they cease? And he uses the word that's translated perfect. When he says, I know in part, but when the perfect comes,
Christ.
Well,
Well, okay. The
not how
thing,
you should interpret that. But
Oh,
well,
really?
the Calvinists are partial preterists, and they are cessationists. They do believe you have the Holy Spirit, but not to the level that it was at the beginning of the church, because it needed to be that powerful to start off the church. That's how they look at it. That's how Matthew would probably see it as well.
it's not altogether wrong. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a sign gift.
I don't believe that, but that's what they believe.
Right. It was used as a sign gift to unbelieving Jews. Jews were always present, but most of the context was Jews to begin with. But
I
Paul
mean,
definitely.
just to throw in a little Alan here, just to irk you somewhat, is when you're courting your wife, you take her out to a candlelight dinner, you light candles, you light incense, you've got the great big steak and all that stuff. But when it comes to your child, you just give them, throw them some Fruit Loops, or, give them a bottle of milk, so there's a lot more involved in the relationship with your wife than just with your child, who you just hold and sing to. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. So
Okay.
you're saying that the first century believers there was the wife of Christ.
That's right. That's right. I love that view, but I love you dearly because you've shown me something. I was just thinking about this today. I was driving down the road and I'm like, I am so stoked because of what Matthew has shown me about Isaiah 14. And that's what I wanted Zach to hear.
But that doesn't mean you take it the way I do, right? Let me go back. Isaiah 14.
Isaiah 14, you remember? You put your covenantal lens on,
Yeah.
and we read it together. It has
Yep.
nothing to do with Babylon, because it's always been about Israel.
Right. Is this with the king of Tyre?
The king of Babylon,
Or is the king of Tyre in a different?
that's a different
Ezekiel.
location. That's Ezekiel, the king
Right.
of Tyre. In fact, the king of Tyre is the one that it has the priestly jewels, doesn't it, in the chest?
Yeah, well, whichever one where it says you were walking up and down amongst the stones of fire and all that, and it goes over all the gems, right? That's all talking about gemstones and
Yeah.
settings and stuff like that. Because it doesn't say, some versions say tabrets and pipes, but that's incorrect. It actually says like settings and sockets or
So
something like that.
it has nothing to do with Babylon and Tyre, just like casting your pearls before swine and not giving that which is holy to the dogs has nothing to do with canines and porcine.
But they're both rebukes against, well, a king and a prince.
They're rebukes to
Yeah.
Israel for taking on those characteristics.
Yeah.
God was not concerned with other nations in okay, so in other words, when God did judge those other nations, he used Israel to do it. The Amorites, Amalekites, all those. He used Israel to do this. He's not going to use Israel as a mouthpiece for one other nation to conquer another nation, because the whole story is about God's relationship with Israel.
Of course. But I mean,
In
I don't
other
know. I thought there
times,
was a story in there about the
in
king
other
of
times,
Tyre
right. In other times, though, Israel was also called
or the prince.
Sodom.
Mm-hmm.
So why would he call Israel Sodom? And so why would he call Israel another nation's name, if not to provoke
Sure,
them?
I have no problem with it still being against Israel, but like, did the event that it's describing take place or not?
I don't know.
Like Nebuchadnezzar, it seemingly is talking about in Isaiah. He's saying like, "Oh, I'm going to show the whole world that you're just a clown shoe, and you're going to die, and people are going to, all the kings of the earth are going to see you." I mean, he could just be talking to like whoever's ruling, Israel at the time, but but does it like follow that Tyre actually experienced this? Because he did say like to you, the between the seas and all this, like the dude is full of himself. Like
Right,
that's
but
totally to me. That's actually Tyre. That's not actually Israel. That seems to be Tyre.
Nebuchadnezzar, um, he did get humiliated for a season, but he he left the world in an esteemed state. He was restored. That's not see this
That's
man
true.
dead
That's
on the
true.
earth.
You're right. That's true. That's interesting because that changes everything.
Sure.
But yeah, basically, it was the short and the small of it was like these guys got full of themselves, and yeah, and they were men. They weren't supernatural entities, right? Because I mean, the whole part it says you were in the Garden of God.
They
You
were
were in
Jewish.
Eden.
Yeah, they weren't just men.
They were
Right.
in Eden, the Garden of God, aka Jerusalem, the Mountain of God, all that jazz. But they weren't like
Exactly.
in the
Exactly.
actual Garden of Eden back in the
So
day.
they weren't spiritual entities, and they weren't just men, but they were Israeli men,
Yeah,
Jewish men.
yeah. I got no problem with that as long as they're not talking about you know who. Red guy, horns, pointy tail, pitchfork.
That's actually an image of a different god, a pagan god. I forgot what his name was. I showed it to you before once before. Pointed ears and a pointed tail and a trident.
Yeah, like Pan or something. I don't know, somebody else.
So Matthew,
Yeah.
do you take that passage literally or
Which one?
Isaiah 14?
Like the whole thing.
Or are you looking at that covenantally or
Yeah, oh, definitely covenantally. I'm looking at many of the Old Testament prophecies as covenantal,
right?
and I do see Israel being called by other nations quite often. I would like to spend time. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I would love to find every instance where it happens. I think it's going to be a lot more than even I think.
Sure. I think so
You
too.
just paid for all this whole month, so we have a whole month. So. But yeah, we can. I can do the homework. You just tell me the phrase you're looking for. I'll find every instance I can find.
There's not really a phrase because it may not have Israel in the phrase. It's just every other nation. So
Okay,
it
that's no problem. I can. I
yeah,
can.
that's
The
We can
one thing,
do that
yeah, the
too.
one thing you can do is like the word of the Lord. Like when I think it's Amos, or is it Malachi, where it says the word of the Lord against Edom, and
at Amos.
We just
there
look up
it
all instances of against, and we
it
find them
does
all.
happen in Amos, and it does happen in Malachi. And Malachi is where Paul quotes, "Jacob I loved, Esau I hated." So I think in Malachi, God is giving or it could be a taunt against something like that. Um, and it turns out to
Again,
be, you
as
look at the
long as the word
details, it
against
turns
is
out to
there.
be Israel.
So I got to
So
find all.
I had looked at that as a taunt, but now it's a serious taunt because now he's actually calling the king of the Jews as the king of Babylon, which
Right.
would be very insulting. So, you know, the prophets often did piss off the Jews, quite often.
That's why they got killed.
But so far the count based off of memory, you have Babylon, Edom, Babylon again, Tyre,
Egypt.
Egypt. So
Well,
really 4 different ones so far.
in Revelation, they're spiritually called Sodom and Egypt.
Oh, so there you go. That's 5. Just Sodom though? Why not Gomorrah?
And then in the Old Testament where it talks about it says Sodom, your sister,
Oh,
Hmm.
which it could be saying that Sodom was the Israel of the past, and that was your sister,
Right.
and
well,
you are even worse than she.
well, that she was pretty bad, right? But that's where Lot was living, right? He was living in Sodom, and righteous Lot was living in Sodom. This is a person that Abraham himself went and go like rescued. Got all the Amorites together and was like, "Let's go rescue him." So, I mean, like that's one of the things I always wondered. Like, what's your perspective on that, Matthew? Who's this guy, Lot, and why does Abraham care about him so much? Why is he like? I thought the whole thing was about Abraham and the promise. Like, why is this other dude now part of the story?
Family.
Well, he would, I think, fall under the umbrella of the head of the family, which was Abraham.
Yeah, Abraham was.
And there is a familial salvation in the Old Testament, and even the what is that? The centurion or the Roman guy, it says, and he and his whole household was saved that day.
Right. Okay.
Acts
Fair
10.
enough. But
So
like, why was Abraham doing certain things? Like, the dispute came after. Wasn't the dispute with like him? They like settled after this. Like they were doing some things. They both picked like different sides, but like Lot got the better lot, as it were, or something
But
like.
look at Lot and how Lot was taken out. It's a picture. It's a picture of the remnant of Israel. Because if Sodom represents Israel, Sodom is completely destroyed. This is why Paul says, had there not been a small remnant, they would have become like Sodom. They would have become like Gomorrah. He's talking about Israel would have been completely destroyed hadn't God chosen a remnant before 70 AD. So Lot represents the remnant of Israel that were saved prior to 70 AD.
Okay. So that's interesting. So Lot represents those who escaped. They heeded the warning. Because if you turned around and you went back, like his wife,
Right, right.
then you got smoked,
That's
right?
covenantal. So there's covenantal. Yep.
So we can stop looking for her salt pillar body. We can just because she's not there,
that's right.
and that's why we can't find Sodom and Gomorrah either. They're not there, or are they at the bottom of the Dead Sea?
When it
I,
says,
I honestly don't know which to take it, like both covenantally and literally, or if some of this literal explanation is hyperbole also. I don't know.
yeah,
But I do know that if you just look at it covenantally, you'll get much more out of it regardless.
Fair
That's
enough.
what meat is.
Mm-hmm. True. I mean, they haven't found anything over there anyway, so.
I mean the reference that Paul makes to they would have been like Sodom. To me, what that kind of ties it together, and then
Yeah,
and Israel is called Sodom in
like Sodom would
Revelation.
100% got wrecked for real.
And
For
they
real,
got
for
wrecked.
real.
The smoke rises forever, and that's same with Israel.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
means they're
found the
dead
sulfur.
forever.
So there's like special sulfur over there that they did find. It's like different from normal sulfur. So it's like it's everywhere, like embedded in everything. If you light it on fire, it takes a really long time to go out. We've seen those, the Ron Wyatts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean I just find certain things like the flood, the Noah story. Like no matter how hard I try, I can't Like I could see it maybe if you showed me like a covenantal way of looking at it, but also in addition, it happened. Like there was a giant like monumental flood, you know. It just like if I look around, like that's all I see. I just see layers and layers of stuff covered, laid down by, you know, a giant flood, and tons of dead things are stuck in it. So that leads me to believe that there was a flood. And then things like the Grand Canyon. But you see what I'm saying? So like Sodom and Gomorrah, all these things, that's why I'm always looking for like, was it a real event, or are you just like using this as a story? Like you would say for Job. Job never happened according to what you guys are saying, right? It's just well, at least Stacey, you would say it's just a wisdom story, and like it's not even necessarily like a real tale per se.
Well, the Jews themselves put it in the place of where the wisdom literature is, so they consider it wisdom literature. That doesn't mean that they're not taking it literally, but there again, they look at this as not just an account, but something that's filled with wisdom.
Right. I just find it funny that there's the whole Shuhite part, right? The Shuhites, and those are the children of Abraham, and then there's the other Temanites, which are the children of like one of Esau's sons. So like to me that kind of makes it like a real story, like it really did happen. Might be for wisdom, but it also is a real story. That happened
Oh,
after Ben Esau, which
so
was a
then,
real story. Still a real story.
so then, when Jesus is talking about the Good Samaritan, because he definitely labels the Samaritan, the priest, the Levite, and things like that, that was an actual physical story where the man got beaten at the roadside and left for dead, and they were all passed by, but the Samaritan came and took him to a inn and healed him up, and then left and told the innkeeper, whatever else he needs, I'll pay you when I come back. So that actually literally physically took place, that event.
Why couldn't it have? That kind of crazy stuff happens probably every day. I mean, if you saw some dude,
Right. So
you help him.
Jesus just pulled that event out of his omniscience to,
No,
share with you, right?
in that case, but again, that's a different story. I
Well,
don't
I know it's a different
necessarily
story,
bring a different story
but
in to say,
it names the groups of people, though. That's where what you were
oh,
saying before,
so
right?
names the groups of people. No, but no, these aren't like Shuhites or
Samaritan.
Okay, so, all right, so Samaritan, because I'm thinking Samaritan like you're a good guy, like a good Samaritan. But that's where it comes from, right?
That's where it comes from, right?
I was a Samaritan. Otherwise, they'd call it a good whatever he was. Okay, so the good guy comes and saves you. But yeah, he could have made that up. But why did he pick Samaritan then? That's what you got to tell me. Like, why did he pick Shuhite? Why did he pick? Maybe
That's
it's the
right.
same reason.
That's a valid question. Why would those?
Maybe it's the same reason for Jacob and Esau, because I mean they were, well, it was Abraham and Abraham's child, and or sorry, no, Jacob's child. No, it was actually Abraham's child, and yeah, one of Esau's. So both.
I found an interesting verse in Zephaniah that seems to call it seems to be covenantally about Israel, judgment, and it seems to call her by a bunch of different names.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it. Let me go to the New King James. So get out of the King James here.
Where are
You
you
don't
at?
like 1611 King James?
Zephaniah 2.
I don't even know where to find that.
It seems to shift back and forth between judgment against Israel, and the other thing you find in some of these passages is Israel's salvation in the same set of verses, which is kind of weird, but that really proves it to be covenantal, because the judgment it's always judgment and then salvation, but the salvation is really the new covenant.
Okay, so what is
So I don't know, I'll just read it and you guys just tell me.
Okay, my covenantal lenses are fairly new, so take it really slowly, please.
All right, so Zephaniah 2. Gather yourselves together, yea, Oh, wait a minute. I went back to the King James. Let me switch it. I don't know how that happened. Okay, gather yourselves together. Yes, gather together, O undesirable nation. Before the decree is issued, or the day passes like chaff, before the Lord's fierce anger comes upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger comes upon you. Seek the Lord, all you meek of the earth, who have upheld his justice. Seek righteousness, seek humility. It may be that you will be hidden in the day of the Lord's anger. For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon desolate. They shall drive out Ashdod at noonday, and Ekron shall be uprooted. Woe to the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Cherethites. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, land of the Philistines. I will destroy you, so there shall be no inhabitant. The seacoast shall be pastures, with shelters for shepherds and folds for flocks. The coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed their flocks there. In the houses of Ashkelon they shall lie down at evening. For the Lord their God will intervene for them and return their captives. I have heard the reproach of Moab and the insults of the people of Ammon, with which they have reproached my people and made arrogant threats against their borders. Therefore, as I live, says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab shall be like Sodom, and the people of Ammon like Gomorrah, overrun with weeds and salt pits, in a perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall plunder them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. This they shall have for their pride, because they have reproached and made arrogant threats against the people of the Lord of hosts. The Lord will be awesome to them, for he will reduce to nothing all the gods of the earth. People shall worship him, each one from his place. Indeed, all the shores of the nations. You Ethiopians also, you shall be slain by my sword. And he will stretch out his hand against the north, destroy Assyria, and make Nineveh a desolation, as dry as the wilderness. The herds shall lie down in her midst, every beast of the nation, both the pelican and the bittern, shall lodge in the capitals of her pillars. Their voice shall sing in the windows. Desolation shall be at the threshold, for he will lay bare the cedar work. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt securely, that said in her heart, I am it, and there is none besides me. How she has become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down. Everyone who passes by her shall hiss and shake his fist.
That is definitely Revelation. That is definitely the whore.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure, but wasn't many of those nations that were mentioned already destroyed? This is after those nations' destruction. So when it's really referring to these nations, it's you're going to be destroyed like they were.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nations mentioned here, but the whole thing seems to be.
Ammonites were already destroyed. The literal
Some
Ammonites.
of them escaped though. Wasn't one of them that escaped from one of the destructions? Or
I
maybe
think
it was
that
just
Ammonite.
temporary.
I'm not
You're
sure.
right, that was beforehand. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Wasn't it the Ammonites that God says there will not be not one left?
Of the Ammonites? I don't. I thought that was the Amorites.
Okay, I knew it started with an A. I
The
wasn't sure.
Amorites were the
I was
people who
asking.
were supposedly like the giants and stuff like that. But then again, keep in mind, half the people, a lot of the people that fought with Abraham to rescue Lot were Amorites. So they weren't all bad. It's just some of them. Eventually, the whole nation went to, after the fact. But yeah, Ammon and Moab, aren't those the two that were generated from Lot's daughters getting at him? I don't remember what
I don't remember.
Moab is one.
Deuteronomy 29:23. If someone can. The whole land burned out of the brimstone and salt, nothing sown and nothing growing, where no plant can sprout, an overthrow like that of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and wrath.
Yeah, see, that seems like a real event to me. Like all 4 of these cities got wrecked. But only Sodom is called out. Because that's where, well, Lot was there first. That's where he left from.
Well, this says like Sodom for Moab and like Gomorrah for the Ammonites in verse 9.
Right. He's against them because of all this stuff. But I think there is a passage somewhere that says that certain ones like Ammon and somebody, I think it's Moab and my mother, they all escape because of they shall not be harmed because they I don't know, something happened. But this is before Revelation, I believe. This is like the whole King of the North, King of the South episode where that happens, and it says right here, like in 13 that you just read, he will stretch out his hand against the north, Assyria, King of the North, King of the South. Right? That all happens right before 70 AD stuff. King of the North, King of the South.
There is a lot of passages speaking of the day of the Lord and his anger, and seems to be always about Israel. One, it's like one time period that it's talking about.
Unless you're a Jew, basically, and you just look at all of these as days of the Lord, because that's what a day of judgment would be. That would be his great day, But I take it all as one event, myself too. There's not multiple days of the Lord in that sense. I am, there is no one else.
Well, yeah, the day of the Lord, right? Like there can only be one, right? It's the one that happened. But go ahead. Sorry.
What a desolation she has become, a lair for wild beast. Everyone who passes by her hisses and shakes his fist. That's got to be Israel.
Yeah.
What's up with that cormorant and the pelican?
All right. So in 15, it says, this is the exultant city that lives securely. So what is the last name? Is it Nineveh?
Yeah, Nineveh did repent, but they eventually got wrecked because they screwed up again. At least that's what I heard.
So it would be, all right, so it would be a stretch if you're saying this is actually prophecies to all these different nations when some of these nations are mentioned only in one sentence. And then you've got Nineveh at the end in verse 13, but then you've got verse 14 and verse 15, which are long verses, all describing the last mention
Right.
of
No,
the.
I'm with you because it says and flocks shall lie down in the midst of her, and beasts of the nations, both cormorant. Like this is the same thing that we've encountered elsewhere, where it says like the lion shall, whatever, the wolf shall lie down with the lamb, and like this dude will lay down with that, whatever, this dude will eat grass. Like this is all not talking like literal animals and stuff either. This is all talking about like dudes are going to be at peace. Right? It's not. There's more to it. These animals aren't literal animals. Like you're never gonna be able to like raise lions in your backyard and just have them act like cows or something, right?
It sounds like Isaiah 14, because in Isaiah 14, how have you fallen from heaven? Your pomp is brought down to the grave.
Exactly. He didn't actually fall from the sky or anything. It's just saying his status, and now his status went from being really awesome to being really crappy, right?
Being in the Garden of Eden refers to being in covenant.
Exactly. Something
Wait,
like that. Mm-hmm.
What?
Did I read the
I know
word?
that's a stretch, Stacy.
It's not really.
It is a bit.
It's not because it's
It
not.
is a bit.
All
It's
right,
not actually talking about the actual garden.
put your
I
covenant.
just woke up. That's all I caught. Sorry, guys.
Oh well, yeah.
Put your covenantal lens.
Rewind.
Well, no, I get it. I'm just saying the Garden of Eden.
We're in Zephaniah chapter 2, and we're comparing that judgment as being covenantally against Israel, like Isaiah 14 was.
Yeah.
I just noticed something funny that I never had read that word bittern, like that's in Zephaniah 2:14.
Bittern. Yeah, the bittern shall lodge in the upper lintels of it.
Well, that word is also in Isaiah 14.
Is it? Because isn't it? Is it really bittern or is it? No, there's a note that here, cormorant is pelican. Okay, so no, bittern is different. Okay.
Well, are we talking about, I mean, I don't know what a bittern is. Are we talking about animals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the ESV has
About
owl,
bird.
hedgehog.
Is a bird.
Ouch.
What? An owl and a hedgehog is a cormorant and a bittern, or a pelican and a bittern. Even though a cormorant and a pelican are not the same.
Yeah, that word only appears 3 times in the entire Bible.
But again, it's not talking about actual cormorants or bitterns, right? It's talking about somebody else. The beasts, the other nations. I mean, I don't know. That seems to be what it's talking about.
What is Isaiah 47:8?
I mean, it says the beasts of the field. Well, like, do you really think that they were told not to go into the land because that they had to watch out, literally, like, or whatever? There was a reason that they were told not to do something yet, because the beasts of the field would increase and then kill them. So they had to wait and like hold the beasts of the field down or something, or the beasts of the air.
Yeah,
So like, what is that all about? Is that really talking about like them like having to chill out and like hunt the lions and keep them down, otherwise they're going to be Scrooged? Or is it talking about other people?
yeah, Stacy, that is a direct parallel right there. There's, thou shalt say to thine heart, I am, and none else beside me.
Mm-hmm. I will never be a widow or
So
suffer
now-
the loss of children.
Now you
And-
know.
And then we've got also where it says, what was the passage where it says Rachel shall mourn for her children?
Is that Jeremiah?
I think that is Jeremiah. Yeah.
Weeping and lamentation?
Or Lamentations, one or the other, right? And verse 7 is really interesting too in Isaiah 47. It says, you said, I will be queen forever. You did not take these things to heart or consider their outcome.
Yeah, it's Jeremiah 31:15. Quoted in Matthew 2:18. But this in itself, this quote is speaks of the devastation and destruction of Israel.
Okay, right. But all right, so in Isaiah 47, the study Bible headline of this is the fall of Babylon predicted. So here, this language is used for Babylon, where we just read it in Zephaniah 2, it's referring to Nineveh. Do you really think they're really just saying the same thing and that's just coincidence?
Right.
Or is it the same individual saying the same thing, just being called by different names based on her actions and her personality and her
Yep, 100%.
I honestly don't know what to call this, or if there's ever anyone that believes this way in a debate. Do you have any
No.
like key words of a debate that would actually look at this covenantally?
You don't want to start a new term, do you? You want to call us like covenantalists or something? Like
I would really like to hear a debate on this, you know.
debate on what? what do you call it? A debate on who is it addressed to? Who is it
Yeah,
about?
right. Who is this really talking about? You know,
Is it really Edom? Is it really Sodom? Is it really the United States of America? No, just kidding.
It would be part. See, like if I was doing a teaching on, um, covenantal. Well, what would you call it? I guess preterism as opposed
okay.
to dispensationalism.
Well, maybe covenantal eschatology.
Somebody's already got
Right,
that.
right.
Somebody's already got who already got that. That's somebody already coined that.
But yeah, this is thing. Like I never heard anybody. I
Right.
never heard anybody talk about this. Even preterists read.
Exactly. You're right. And it's so refreshing
Well,
and
that's
clear.
that's why I mean, I invited you, right,
What did?
Matt? Because I love your perspective. Like your perspective, I believe, has key elements that we need to like dissect. That's
But
why
all I'm really doing
I'm so glad to have you.
all I'm really doing is making the Bible very simple. It's
That's
repetitive.
what it should be, yeah. But you get your mind polluted with all these things that other people have taught you and said, and all this other garbage, and you can't think clearly because
But you
all
you do
garbled already.
but you do realize that even though I agree with you that this does make the Bible far more simple, other people that would take this literally as no, he's not talking about Israel would say you're making it very convoluted because
Right,
that's how they would see it.
right, right. You're right. It would say, no, well, then how do I know when it's talking about Moab and when it's talking about Israel? Well,
Right.
the
The meat of
whole
the
thing is
matter.
about Israel.
The meat of the matter should really show you who it's talking to.
Well, if you think about where Moab came from, I mean, technically, you want to get into the technicals, right? This is the didn't we figure that out? Isn't that Moab and Ammon were the two children that were made from the union of Lot's daughters and Lot, and then those became those two nations, and but ultimately they were still, if they were covered under Abraham and the familial, well then there you go. So they're all still part of the fam, so they can easily be called out. But I still agree with what you guys were saying. It's not necessarily talking about Moab and Ammon, although I do believe there is, a historical sense it still happened. I mean, why wouldn't he use these people as, right?
If you look at it this way, Israel was told to, separate themselves from the nations, but they became like the nations. But then Israel gets destroyed. It's almost like
Right.
Israel is like the nations are wrapped up in Israel, and then they get destroyed, and now everything's gone. Like when the statue gets, broken down, and nothing is left except the stone that broke it down.
Right.
So all the nations are wrapped up into I've said this before. Israel is like a microcosm of the world, and then its sinfulness.
Right. So
It's judged for the entire world.
right, because it is clear that anybody could have joined themselves to Israel at any time in the Old Testament as well. They just had to do certain things, and then they were gravy beans, right?
Yeah.
So even if you were from Jericho or wherever you were from, you could have totally just been like, "Hey, I want to join you guys," and they would have been like, "Cool, come over here and do this stuff," and then like you're cool. And then you'll be counted as a native, and then you're a native, even though you're an Ammonite. Well, now you're a native of Israel, even though you are an Ammonite secretly. But yeah, so all the nations. What do you think about those in Genesis, where it goes over all the nations after the flood? I mean, all the people, rather, the people after the flood. You think those are like legit people, and that's where the people came from? Like, it makes sense to me, but
Yeah, I would say so.
or do you think those are also just like some sort of play on words or something?
No, I would take that literal.
Okay, cool.
I'm just going to say Nahum 3:18 and 19 is very interesting too.
Read it.
O king of Assyria, your shepherds slumber, your officers sleep. Your people are scattered on the mountains with no one to gather them. There is no healing for your injury. Your wound is severe. All who hear the news of you will applaud your downfall, for who has not experienced your endless cruelty?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty ouch.
What chapter is that?
Nahum 3:18 and 19.
And Nahum lived when? Anytime during Assyria?
I'm not quite sure the timing on the minor prophets.
Because Assyria did get, there was. I'm pretty sure that's part of the whole King of the North, King of the South episode, which is just right a little bit before Jesus and right before 70 AD. And by a little bit, I mean like 100, 200 years. Like,
Well, this is what's
like
interesting
25.
is in Nahum chapter 1, verse 1, it says, This is the oracle of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum the Elkoshite.
Elkashite. See, okay. So who's Elka or Elk? Yeah, Elka. I never heard anybody. I'd never seen that name anywhere but there. So
The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. Jealous. He only reserves his jealousy for Israel.
oh, there you go.
I mean, my gosh, it's just everywhere.
It's
Well,
everywhere. That's
well,
right.
how do you look for it. You know, you
It
don't
really,
find the keys, Rob, unless you're looking for them, right?
I can't help but be stoked because now this gives me a whole new way to look at the Bible completely new, and that doesn't come often.
No, the last time it happened was preterism, and the time before that was, well, who knows?
How about Nahum 1, the last verse there? Behold, on the mountains the feet of him who brings good tidings, who proclaims peace.
Oh yeah, Jesus definitely went to Nineveh on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing is about one thing. See, if somebody said to me, "What is the Bible about?" I would say it's about the change from old covenant to new.
And it's also warning them, right? So if you keep going, well, it's like, oh, they did not receive the truth that they might be saved.
I
Well,
would I would
they
describe
might be saved from what? Well, from being burned up in the fire of the Romans. Like, you could have escaped, but since you want to be retard mode, you get stuck here and you're going to get burned in the fire. Like, right?
I would describe it a little differently. I would say that a um it's a tome of God's relationship with Israel. Because that does cover the old covenant relationship and the new covenant relationship.
Okay, but is Adam the first man? Right? He is, though. Right? Still,
I
that part doesn't change.
I'm on the fence.
Ah, you guys in fences. I'm gonna make the fence electric from now on.
Yeah, but the way you describe it, using the word Israel, the word Israel changes. It's a pretty interesting word when you look at it. It means so many things. It's a guy's name. It's the name of a nation, and it's the name of just God's people.
Right. So it's the name of God's people who are in covenant.
Right. And that's the key to the Bible, is knowing
And now
that
doesn't wreck
Israel.
us on a continual basis, or he never did in the first place.
What's that?
He wrecks us. Why doesn't he wreck us like on a continual basis like before, right? It's just like, oh, these guys, I'm gonna smite you. Now I'm gonna smite you. Now I'm gonna smite this nation. I'm gonna smite that nation. I'm gonna smite you guys over and over and over again.
I can certainly see why Jews would not take the Old Testament this way, because in Nahum, in verse 14, it says, "There will be no descendants to carry your name. I will cut off the carved image and cast idol from the house of your gods.
Right.
I will prepare your grave, for you are contemptible."
But that's the reason why I feel that even like Jesus was teaching the apostles, he was supposedly not, he was describing or explaining the parables to them, and the others were blinded. But Jesus knew that the destruction was near. I mean, that's what John the Baptist came on the scene preaching.
The axe is laid to the root.
Yeah. So Jesus comes and but the Jews of the day, even the ones who were believing in Jesus, couldn't even imagine the destruction. I mean, that's why Jesus says, I have things to tell you that you can't bear yet. But when the Comforter comes, he'll guide you into all truth. And then they ask him, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel? Because they have no idea the place is going to get, totally annihilated.
Right.
And they couldn't bear to hear that. And
Doesn't it?
they have the Old Testament to read, but it's not plain. It's because other nations are mentioned.
Makes sense.
But there's plenty of judgment against Israel directly in the Old Testament too.
Well, I mean, Moses laid it all out for him right in the get-go. He said, like, if you keep the commands, right, like, here you go. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get the blessings. But if you don't, here go all the curses. Get wrecked, right?
Exactly.
What were the curses? All these things with freaking animals. Again. More cormorants and more...
And there's a reason why Moses didn't lead his people into the promised land.
Why?
Moses represents the law.
100%.
Joshua represents Yeshua. The Lord saves. He's the one that led that newer generation, the one that had faith, Joshua and Caleb, and the younger into the promised land.
That's true.
Because Moses was a friend of God.
Of course. But, they did get into the promised land, and then, like, certain peeps did certain things that they shouldn't have, and then Israel got wrecked.
Well, that's the story over and over and over again.
Like, they were like, oh, like, let's just, this like, the God's got our back, like, now, like, we've seen the things, like, we'll believe him now, like, okay, like, we got AI. We don't even need to, like, consult God on this one. We can just, like, go try and take him out, like.
Each time Israel turns away, it's
Didn't
just
work.
a facet to the diamond.
Oh. Why a diamond, though?
Because diamond has lots of facets.
Okay, fair enough. But this is exactly, Matthew, why I'm always asking you for your view, because, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for.
It's somewhat unique. Well,
yeah.
So unique, we can't even find a debate about it.
Can't. No, that's why, like, there's what, like, 2 people maybe who say these kinds of things, and we haven't found the other one.
I just think, this became clear when I abandoned dispensationalism and I realized, wait a minute, the whole thing is the destruction of Jerusalem 70 AD. That is the climax of the Old Testament.
I don't quite
Old
even
Covenant.
know how I'm going to introduce this into my Bible studies.
But then again, how did I meet you? That's how. It's like, then again, how did I meet Matthew? Oh, right, that was silly. I was actually inviting a different person, and then Matthew decided to chime in and say, like, I would join, though. Like, how did that happen?
It was predestined.
Do that. Like, what are you doing? And then I actually replied back, and I was like, sure, you can join.
Matthew was the rooster of that moment. He had no choice but to crow.
Exactly. So you see, so it's like there you go. Well,
Do you remember what that video, what the topic was? Because I don't.
by the way, yeah, I don't know what the video topic was, but I do want to know what you guys think I should call this video. What should I title
Covenantal
it?
lenses. The covenantal lens. Reading scripture with a covenantal lens.
That's what you think?
Yes.
And you, Matthew?
Yeah, that sounds good. And it goes into, I mean, that's what helped me. That's what helped me interpret the parables, is that covenantal lens. Because Jesus is doing nothing more than reiterating all of this Old Testament judgment stuff.
Well, I mean, he did say like if you would have, whatever if you were of like if you believed God, then you would have believed in me because Moses wrote about me. Like Moses, if you believe Moses, you would believe me because he wrote about me. But also the whole thing was written. The whole thing was about him. Right? It was about Jesus coming and that whole thing. Starting forward, the new covenant, new heavens, new earth. To me, it just flows. Like take the two and combine them. Like we don't have to wreck the world. We don't have to have hellfire rain down and burn everything to the ground. Even though I don't see how you're gonna burn everything
Mhm.
when quarters of the planet is covered in water. How you gonna melt? How you gonna melt water? I mean,
But I was accused of being simple-minded by Tyler because I see one theme throughout the Bible.
right? No, I agree. That's
It's,
interesting stuff.
but it's not simple. I mean, it's a simple theme, but
Simple, but it's not simple if you're not looking at it with the correct lens.
yeah,
It's very complicated to build that covenantal lens, but once you build that covenantal lens, when you see through it, you see simplicity.
right.
But you have to completely shed the way that the Jews are interpreting the Old Testament and the way that traditional Christians interpret the Old Testament.
Especially the beginning part.
Albert still got his defensive wall up, but he's built spikes around it. Because after you left Wednesday, Matthew, me and Alan and Albert got into a very lively discussion. I don't think it's been posted yet, but
What was it about? I got to listen.
I did that. I posted it. It's there now. I think.
is it okay?
What,
Well,
what,
after you get off, you just hear we're talking about the flood and Peter's comparison of the flood to the day of the Lord,
right.
consistency, and then I'm actually we actually talked about, is God all knowing? And so Alan believes that the future exists. So I was challenging him with consistency of, if the future exists, but yet we have free will, that kind of thing.
Oh
So it's
man,
it's very interesting. So I mean,
I wish I was there.
it lasted till like 2 a.m.
You can be there. Just listen to the video.
You,
Yeah,
You
just
won't be able to participate, but you can take notes and write them down for later.
it really is highly inconsistent to believe that way, that the future does exist, but hey, we can do what we want.
right, exactly. And
You can do whatever you want.
Albert had a cow
I
when
am always having a cow.
when I was saying I'm kind of on the fence of a worldwide flood, because if Peter's comparing the day of the Lord with fire, and me being a full preterist, I see that as a local judgment against Israel. That if I see the flood is local and the fire is local, that's consistent. Or if I see the flood is worldwide and I see the fire is worldwide, that would be consistent. But to see one as worldwide and one local, that would not be consistent. And Alan saw that. But I think that Alan goes the other way. He believes in a worldwide flood and a worldwide fire.
Hmm.
Yeah, see, like the only way you could get away with that is if you say all the animals that were on the ark were actually other people, which that's kind of defeating the purpose of saying that there's 8 people, right? So But yeah, I don't know. I did. I definitely probably had a conniption over that. Not saying I remember everything that I said, but if I listened to it, I would remember everything like right away. I'd be like, oh yeah, I would totally say.
Were you pretty buzzed, Albert?
Probably by that point, yeah, it was like 2, definitely.
He was so connipted. He said, I could hang up this call.
I probably did too.
I've never heard that much conniption. So
Sometimes, sometimes you just have to win the argument. It's like, yeah, well, you want to run this? But no, obviously no, I wouldn't do that.
Lori was there, but she was very quiet.
I
She
was
was
tired. I was falling asleep in and out.
again, just like tonight, just falling asleep in and out.
I just kind of dozed for a second and then I woke up.
Oh, just for a second. What are you talking about? That was like 20 minutes again.
No, I was awake. I was listening, but I woke up. Anyway, yeah. It's been a busy week.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've been awake since 5 o'clock this morning, so. And now it's what time?
But yeah, so now that you just gave me all that money, like I'm curious. I'm curious. If I bought you a book, would you read it?
Me?
Yeah. It would
Oh,
only have
probably
to be
not.
to you, because I think Stacy's kind of already on board with me, and Matthew doesn't care, so he already said he doesn't care, so it's no harm, no foul. Like he doesn't get the book, but you can.
I'm just simplistically covenantal.
He doesn't have time to read a book anyway. Right? You don't, right?
Matthew is our covenantal serpent.
Dude, that's exactly what that's the stuff I like talking about.
Our
The
simple
serpent in the
covenant.
garden and who dat, all that stuff. Because it's definitely, oh, it's a talking snake. You believe in talking snakes now. Who's the talking donkey, though?
Speaking of serpents,
Was he just really calling him a jackass? I mean,
I
There's
wonder
lots
when
of asses running around, huh?
I wonder when
Like,
Victor is going to come on.
start the same.
Victor's hiding.
I told you he wasn't going to do it, man. I'm telling you, he doesn't. He's not organizing notes, as far as I can tell. He's not even listening to this recording. If he is, kudos, get your ass back in here. But
See, but that's a perfect example of somebody reading the Old Testament like a Jew.
Exactly.
I think he just wants to, no offense, Victor, if you are listening, I do believe that you just strongly believe what you believe, but you don't really have the ability to back it up, really.
You know who would be great to have this debate with, Stacy?
Who?
The covenantal debate that we were just talking about?
Yes.
Okay, who?
Michael Brown.
Really,
Yes.
Michael Brown?
Yes, very much so.
Can I invite Don?
Don Preston?
Or would you prefer William?
We've had William Bell on.
That was before me, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It was before me too. We tried to get him on again, but like never happened because I think Zach fell asleep at the wheel.
The what?
Zach fell asleep at the wheel. He was supposed to hit him up and whatnot. Somebody was supposed to get somebody, Chris or somebody.
No. Listen. The one who's actual friends with William Bell is Chris.
Oh, so it was Chris. Okay, so yeah, and then Chris just kind of we haven't seen him in a while. That's all.
Anybody heard from him?
He came on not too. It was probably like a half a year ago now. Dang.
Yeah, I was here when he came on last.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought that Zach and other people knew him like kind of more personally, so I figured, if he was gonna come back, he'd come back. But it doesn't seem like he's going to. Just like I don't think other people are gonna come back. But if they do, good, because I didn't think you were coming back, Lou Bell, and here you are. So.
Yeah.
Although you're very sleepy.
But I was only gone for how long? Not even a year.
Fair enough. You need some not sugar to wake up, right? No, you need to go back to bed.
Did you have your hot cocoa?
No. No, I didn't.
That's why you fell asleep again.
Oh, I have a big breakfast in the morning. No, I was awake since 5 o'clock.
Well, that too.
And I think my diet change has really affected my tiredness.
But I mean, like, is it possible for you to like just like fall asleep in the middle of like walking somewhere? I mean, like,
Yeah.
if you're actively doing something, can you fall asleep? It's like,
No.
Zach fell asleep in front of me in the middle of a sentence.
Oh my God. No, I mean I'm laying on the couch, laying down, right? But yeah, I've been eating so much fats and so much trying to put on weight. And I think I can't even stop yawning. um I did have sweet potatoes for lunch and potatoes for lunch today. So
Oh,
I am
that's
eating
why
some
you're
carbs.
crashing. That's exactly why you're crashing. You ate all that starch.
But I need to. I can't just live on I would not want to lose any weight. So that's what he was talking about with carb cycling. I'm not sure how to do it yet.
Well, the bodybuilders that want to put on a lot of weight, they just
Uh-huh.
eat tons and tons of chicken. They get so tired of chewing chicken that they'll put it in a blender to drink it.
That's disgusting.
we
Okay.
can't do that. We can't talk about chicken blenders and food
No.
again. We already did that. Either we got to stick with the Bible, or I got to push the end button.
Why? Lots of Christians are keto.
There's a time to talk about keto and a time to talk about the Bible. Right now, it's still time to talk about the Bible, unless
Fine.
we're done. Then I
Keep
can hit
talking.
the end button and you can talk about whatever you want. Those are my rules because I just made them up, even though you paid for it.
It's usually the way it goes. Listen to those sirens.
Yeah, where is that? Your house?
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yeah. I live right on the highway heading north and south. Well, that was pretty good Bailey's. What time do you want to do that tomorrow night, Stacy?
I've got some friends out of town that are going to take me and my mother out to eat tomorrow, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure when that is. Probably Sunday afternoon would probably be the best time.
Sunday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll let Shannon know.
Okay. Sunday afternoon, maybe 4 p.m. Eastern time.
So that would be like
1 o'clock for you, I think, if
1
you're 3
o'clock.
hours. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, this is King James, man. Like, what? All right, so I'm in Genesis and I'm just reading random verses. This is 31:53. Yeah, Genesis 31:53, it seems. It says the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father. Then it says judge betwixt. Looks like us.
Wait.
Between.
What is between?
Mhm.
Judge between us. Okay. I was like, what the heck is betwixt?
That's
Like,
after they ran into the cause.
yeah, okay. So this King James, see, sometimes I get all mashed because this King James is 1611 version, but I did that to myself. Yeah, I
Right.
bought this version on purpose. Oh well.
It's challenging. It's kind of fun every now and then.
Well, it is. Cause, man. The cause. You'll never forget it.
Yeah, I know. I'll never forget the cause.
What's the cause, you guys?
All right, so he was reading Joshua, and he was reading about that they went into a cause, and he had forgotten that the U back then was a V.
So it's really caves. and Stacy easily saw this and was like, it's caves.
It's the cause. That's funny.
Because of
I
that,
think the S's look like F's.
yeah, that too.
U's look like V's. It's really you gotta wear a medieval lens to actually really make hide nor hair of it.
And even then, you can still
Right,
mess it up.
right.
What do you mean it hasn't changed? Hey? Isn't
Well,
that what
that's just betwixt us.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you watch that debate with him and Stephen and JW
What debate is this? I haven't seen any debates lately.
on the KGV onlyism? Oh, it's good. I think it's an old one.
James White, yeah, I saw that a long, long time ago.
Oh, I was so embarrassed for Stephen. I literally wanted to just kind of, ooh, that's embarrassing.
When I first saw that debate, I didn't know who Steven Anderson was.
Oh, didn't you?
I thought that this was an interviewer that was interviewing James White. And when the interviewer started giving his opinion, I'm like, who in the hell does he think he is?
He's Steven Anderson, of course. He will not sit down quietly or anything like that. Definitely not. I like him.
But
Though,
you could see him being backed into a corner.
well,
And
see,
you could
that's
see his eyes just drop when he was like, he all of a sudden knew where he was, and he was, oh my God.
he said
You
he
could see
had
he
some
was-
good videos though. Like he has some good things. Like, but just like all of us, we probably all have some things wrong, and we have a
Oh,
lot of
absolutely.
a bunch of things right. But there's the balance where we should all be in agreement eventually, right?
I think it was the homosexual thing that got him where he is today. You know?
Well, he's got equal fame for I think the group's called Sons of the Revolution or something, because he leans more towards libertarianism, and he got his face smashed in by the Border Patrol. They busted his window because he
Oh, I
refused to
remember
roll it
that.
down.
I remember that. Wow.
He sued him and won, though.
Yeah, but he had to go through that, pain and that time. But that's part of the reason for his fame, I think, as well.
Yeah.
It is, and also because I compare him to Anderson from Helsing. So, not that you know that, but now you can look it up. Like
Yeah,
he
he seems like
literally
a
is. He's
character.
like Anderson from Helsing. Totally.
Never heard of him.
But I saw the first video where he got up and he was just a teenager, and he had the, real long hair. He looked like he just walked out of the episode of Saved by the Bell.
Oh, really? Was he a preacher then?
He was just, this was his first time speaking.
Oh.
Very, very effeminate.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I wonder why he hates gays so much.
Well, if he's a closeted homosexual, yeah, he would hate gays a lot.
Yeah. Hmm. When's you guys' Thanksgiving?
I don't really follow dates, so I don't know. Is Thanksgiving the one where it's always on a Thursday or something, or is it like the 25th? Or
I don't
I
know.
don't really follow dates that much.
I'm not sure when your guys' is.
It's sometime towards the end of November.
Oh yeah, ours is next weekend.
Next weekend is yours. Does your Thanksgiving have anything to do with the Native Americans up there, or is it something completely different?
I'm not really sure. We just kind of go with the flow,
Oh,
you know?
hmm.
Please, thank you. Excuse me. Pretty polite.
I beg your pardon, and how dare you?
Exactly. We're known for that.
Hey, hey.
Eh? Our passivity.
So when you said you had bacon the other day,
Hmm.
Whoa.
was it Canadian bacon? I mean, all right. So what we call
Oh,
Canadian bacon is,
the circle.
what do you call that?
I would call that back bacon, and I don't like it.
Okay,
Spherical bacon, as Rob would put it.
Or not? Is it back bacon? Yeah, I think that's what they call it. Yeah, where it can be like there's another name for it too. I can't remember the name of it.
fatback.
It's definitely not the same as regular bacon. Like I would always take regular bacon over Canadian bacon, but I do like me some Canadian bacon too. That's more like pork roll or something here.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the name of it. Hang
Fatback.
on. No. Um, it's served on eggs.
It's served on egg McMuffins.
Yeah, it's served on egg muffins, and it's served on. Oh my mind's not working right now.
No, it
With the
sounds like you.
sauce, the white sauce. Come on, Stacy.
Tartar
Thank you.
sauce.
Huh?
What?
No,
Oh,
it's.
hollandaise.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, the Holland.
But that's yellow sauce. That's not really white. It's supposed
Yeah. Well, if it's real, it's yellow.
if it's white, you just need to throw it away.
I know. Um. Yeah, so that's the bacon that's served on there too. But for life of me, I can't remember what it is. I don't
In
really care
Georgia,
for it.
in Georgia, the good old boys, they love having a tenderloin uh, on a biscuit loaded with Tabasco sauce.
Huh.
By the way, if you need Tabasco peppers, I got some.
I'm gonna pass on that, Albert. Sean, whatever your
I
name.
can't send you peppers. You're in Canada. I don't know what the rules are. Plus, I don't ship to Canada.
Oh, you can buy anything. You can get anything across that border if you want.
But I do have Tabasco peppers, which means if you want some seeds, I can hook you up.
No, I don't grow anything.
Well, you can't grow anything because you live in the frozen tundra of the north.
We have amazing gardens. You guys really got to educate yourself, man.
Yeah,
Come
only
on,
in
man.
the summertime when the sun is over the northern part of the
Well,
planet, obviously.
when can you guys grow?
I can grow all the time. Right now, I'm growing. Like I have all sorts of stuff growing.
Where
Right
do you
now,
live again?
Pennsylvania, and
It doesn't get winter?
he's in Georgia, and then
You don't get winter?
no, we get winter, but like
Okay.
we don't get it like you're way like right now, in my opinion, the sun is going away from you. It's going away, and it's going away from me too. It's leaving us. It's going to the south, and it's gonna make winter up here.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I do believe like they call it global warming, but I call it just after effects
I
of
know
the
you call it
snow,
recovery from the flood.
right.
Um,
It's all gonna.
all I'm saying is your growing time is
Mhm.
not that much different than ours.
I would expect so because otherwise, I don't know how you could live up there.
Our growing time is from mid-May to mid-October.
Ours would be we put our we start to grow it. We pre-seed, and then of course long weekend in May, That's when it goes in the ground, and it's coming out by September.
Right.
Depends what it is. I mean, there's still potatoes in
yeah,
the ground. There's still all the stuff in the ground.
There's other things like cabbage and kale and broccoli and all these
Yeah,
things. Like
we grow it all
they
here.
can tolerate way colder temperatures than like any of the other plants. Like you can't grow tomatoes or peppers, but you can get
We grow
cabbage and
tomatoes and
kale and
peppers.
all these things, collards and
We grow lots of tomatoes.
brassicas.
What?
I'm just saying you can get the brassicas a lot because it's cold. Like the cold, they can take it. They won't die.
What's that? Sorry.
Brassicas like broccoli, cauliflower, stuff like that. That's like got that like you know
Yeah.
they all have like a similar look.
But we grow lots of
Kale,
tomatoes, lots of
kale,
cucumbers, lots of
cabbage. Like
zucchini.
you know how like the leaf on a kale or a cabbage or a broccoli, like
Yeah.
they're all similar. So that those kind of plants, brassicas, they can tolerate the cold a lot better than tomatoes, peppers, all
Well, I
those.
get what you're saying, but we still grow tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and
Yeah.
everything here.
Up until what point? You can't grow them anymore. It's too late now.
No, end of September. But then
Yeah.
your growing season's finished, right?
Yeah, ours is pretty much finished. Just like ours are still going for a little bit, maybe out to Halloween if we're lucky, and then and then it's
Yeah.
toast.
Sometimes we can too. This year, no, not at all. But I
Yeah.
mean, you're pretty well finished growing by then anyway.
One of my friends, she's a very old mountain woman up here, and so she was telling me today was the last day of a very hot day, and it did get into the 90s today, but so this is the last day. I take her word for what she says is going to take place.
Hmm.
So now it's going to start to cool off for us.
90.
Yeah, we had a record day the other day. We broke the record here for the temperature yesterday, I think, or the day before. It was like 93, and the record was like 87 or 89 or something.
Well, we might have broke the record for coldness. That's it.
But I think it's all just still balancing out from the flood. Like it's all just collateral damage here. So it's not really warming the globe or anything. It's just like chill out. It's all just balancing. But yeah, don't build your cities on the edge of the water. Like not recommended. But what do you think? Because it did say in the Bible that the seasons shall continue forever. Like that was kind of part of the deal with Noah, right? It was like the rainbow was in the sky, and then he said, the seasons will continue pretty much forever, is the verse.
So do you believe that the water from the flood is basically captured in ice now with the ice caps?
No, well, some of it is, yeah, some of it, but
Where'd the other part go?
what do you mean? Where'd the other part go? What other part? It's already all melted. It's already back into the lakes and ponds and all that. Like it's already all
So
over.
you're telling me that if the ice caps were completely to melt,
Yeah.
that the complete world would be an ocean?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying then it could start to balance out again. Because like first off, you have to like, did the Earth ever have ice on it in the first place?
So if you say it didn't,
It didn't because of the
okay.
flood. I don't think it
But
did.
what I'm saying is that for a worldwide flood, every piece of land would have had to have been covered with water.
Say that again. No, every place has
Yes.
to be
For
covered
a
with.
worldwide flood,
Oh yeah,
every
definitely. Everything
piece
had to
of
be covered
land would have to be covered by water.
for at least
So
a year,
if you
almost.
say that extra water from the flood is tied up in the ice caps
No, it's not.
and
No,
the
no,
rest
no,
of it is in the oceans and lakes,
no, no, no,
then
no, no,
all right, what I'm asking you is where did the other water go? Where
no.
is it at?
So here, there's a whole bunch of things that have to go on here. But basically, imagine you have a flat sheet of land, okay? More or less. Yes, there's bumps and hills and all that jazz, right? So you have some already mountainous, whatever you want to call them, small mountains. All this gets wrecked in a cataclysm where all the ground just bursts up in certain spots, and so now it's shape-shifting the landscape already. So now things are getting carved out, soil's getting moved around, right? So it all gets settled back out, water drains off, it leaves giant ponds, giant lakes, and all sorts of things in addition to the ocean. And all the land, it says all, the mountains went up and the valley sank down, and then all the waters balanced each other out and all that, right? So all, like, half the water came from below the surface of the earth, and that's where it went back down to. But we still
Okay.
have a good
Well,
chunk of it up here on the top, but only a small fragment of it is locked up in ice that are on the caps. So if they were to melt, yes, you might get a change, but guess what? Once they're melted, now what? Now we're getting back to equilibrium. That's my personal view. So it's not global warming or anything like that. It's nothing we're doing. It's just still balancing out. Like, all the ice ain't gone yet. Like, there wasn't ice here in the first place. So when it says things like the seasons shall continue and they'll be hot and cold, all this stuff pretty much forever is what it says. Continually it shall not cease. It doesn't, cold and hot doesn't mean like freezing cold and like super hot, right? Like, that's ridiculous. There should be a balance where it could get warmer. There's the warmer season, and then there's the cooler season. Because remember, it said that there was a mist that initially went up and watered the whole earth. There wasn't any rain, apparently. It was a mist instead. Well, why was it a mist? I don't know. When's the last time you ever took a big giant landmass and put a whole bunch of water under it and see what happens? I don't know how that would work. Do you? But there you go. That's my thoughts. Sorry if I put you to sleep. Damn.
no, you didn't. It's just, you finally did answer my question. So you said that the extra water went back into the ground. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It went back to where it
You
came
just went
from.
around about it.
No,
Yeah.
it's back. Look, some of it's underneath of us, back in the reservoirs where they came from. Some of it is what we call the
Okay.
ocean.
So I have a
Lakes, ponds, all these things like Lake Superior, and some of it is
Sure.
clouds, and some of it is ice.
Sure. It's very clear. Okay. So let me ask you this.
Some of it's in your refrigerator.
Because the water came from the ground in a reservoir, you're saying, right? Some of the water came from a reservoir under the ground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, when that water come up,
Mm-hmm.
what was in the reservoir? Air?
No, it was just under pressure. And once one broke, they all broke. They were under immense pressure and they all broke because all the fountains of the great deep bursts. I don't know what that means, but I assume there's massive tectonic, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if there were volcanoes there to begin with, but if there weren't, that's where they came from. Like, I can't say that there weren't volcanoes or anything, but all the fountains of the deep burst. Fountains in there, I believe, are water. And so actually most of the water didn't come from, if you read it carefully, most of the water came from below the surface of the earth, from the fountains, not from the 40 days and 40 nights of rain. Even if you want to go to the place where 40 days, 40 nights, 40, 40, 40, like, this is all just symbolic, never really happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it says that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, pretty much on the whole earth. And I would imagine that would be torrential downpour, at least in some places, to the point where, yeah, everything is starting to flood. And so, I don't know, like, you tell me, like, if the earth didn't have any oceans in the first place, like huge oceans, like, where did the waves come from? Like, why are there waves and sloshing back and forth like that? Because people often imagine like our ocean today and like, oh, like Noah's Ark, like, right? He's just sailing there with his ship and like it would get wrecked because of the tossing of the waves would be so violent. It's like, but again, that's an assumption. Like, you don't know that. What if it was a gradual pickup? Like, I don't know when the last time you flooded the entire Earth from its, original form, however it was. That's why I think we have some of these artifacts that they don't really make any sense. Like, I'm sure you've seen some of them, right? You see some artifact where it has like seemingly a rock and then there's like random like staircases, like seemingly just like randomly stairs like carved out in them or something. Like, it looks like staircases are carved. It's like, real. Do you really think that they just went up there and carved that out? Like, this has got to be something else. This screams cataclysm to me. Like, this thing got wrecked. Whatever it was, it got wrecked. Like, it's not even had to be something like they carved out. It could be an imprint, right? Like, you know how it is if you make concrete. You're literally making a stone or a brick, right? You're making a stone. So what if you put your handprint in it, right? Or whatever, some imprint. You put an imprint of a staircase, right? So what would you see? Something that looks like a staircase that's carved out, perfectly all precise, when really it's just an imprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't that scream high cataclysm to you? Like, if you saw a rock that looked like just like a normal like lava rock that like looked like a natural piece of like something, right? It just was like way down in a valley. But then you saw all these like random like staircase shapes in it. To me, that screams giant flood with cataclysmic volcanoes and all sorts of crap going off, right? Like, people's houses, their staircases would get washed up against, like, you never know. I don't know how these things are made. I'm just imagining, but I imagine if there was a huge cataclysm which flooded the entire world where all the volcanoes were going off, being created, there's earthquakes, like, it would be a terrible time. I imagine it wasn't fun. But I could see like all sorts of stuff wouldn't make sense afterwards. You'd look for your house, it would look completely different. Plus, it wouldn't probably even be there. Like Sacsayhuaman. Have you guys ever seen that place? Sacsayhuaman?
No, never heard of it.
Okay. I'm not sure how to spell that, but you can phonetically work it out and find the place. It's near Cusco, Peru. There's these like all these walls. They're like gigantic walls, and they're made out of like really weird stones that all seem to be like smushed together somehow. Like, you'd have to see them. I can't even explain it. Like, it's more than just like taking a brick and putting it next to another flat brick. Like, all these are like different shapes. They're all smushed together, like really crazy. But again, they're buried, and then after that, there's also other work where it's like definitely at least 2 or 3 different people who like worked on the site. But again, it seems like once upon a time there was a civilization or some people there before the flood, and then the flood cometh and wrecketh everything. And then people afterwards find it after the flood, and they're like, oh, hey, well, like, let's make our house here in this ruin, we'll fix it, right? Wouldn't that make sense to you? Especially if there really was like a worldwide flood and everybody got murked. Don't you think that's what they would do? If you found a place that was like perfectly livable, like you explored the whole place, you're like, oh, like there's some rooms, we can fix it up real quick. Like, let's use this. Or would you be like, well, we got to start from scratch. We got to make our own stuff. What do you think? Because I think a lot of the megaliths got marked and they refound it. I mean, this is all pre-flood stuff. This is all Bible. This is all biblical. Unless, of course, you want to take the covenantal view.
Oh, come on now. That's biblical too. You know that.
But no, I mean, I see these things, and that's why I believe that like it's an actual event. Like, because I can see like that, like nobody would just go carve like random shapes out of like random rocks. Like, that doesn't even make sense. It's like, oh yeah, let's make 3 stairs right at the top of that hill. That'll totally mess with people in the future. And then let's put like 6 more on the other side and like 4 over there. It's like, no, this was all something once upon a time, and it got wrecked. And this is the pieces of it. And like, I don't know. For all I know, that this this rock could be just like the house encased in mud, right? Like, I don't know what floods do when they're massive and they carry massive amounts of sediment. You know how to make concrete, though, right?
Hmm.
So how do you make concrete?
Crush up a bunch of rocks and have a binder and add water to it.
Well, there you go. So why can't nature or God make his own natural concrete and concrete everything to the point where there are all these different rocks? They look all weird. It's like, no, that's not.
But why doesn't God create water in the Genesis account?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always wondered that. Like, why not? Water was already there, seemingly. Guess he doesn't want to give his opinion.
He probably just woke up again.
He probably did. My bad. I always put everybody to
So do
sleep.
you think all these sites that are being dug up, all this archaeology going
I think
down,
that possibly where we might be getting some of our technology from. Because is it a coincidence that we start digging in the dirt, we find dinosaurs, and next thing you know, we have iPhones and computers and airplanes? It's like, where did we get all this stuff from? Like, did you guys find some stuff in the dirt? Did you? You just don't want to tell us about that?
so my question was,
What did
do
you?
you think that a lot of these that are coming up, do you think the dirt is from the flood? Or do you think that everybody just walked away from this town and nobody survived it and nobody remembered where it was? You know what I mean? Like, is it just per chance? I don't know. It just seems all pretty
Perchance.
fishy to me.
Is what perchance?
Well, is it just by chance that, people found these cities? I mean,
Yeah, I mean sometimes it is like if you look
well,
at
no, I don't mean by chance that way. I mean, like, is this old sediment that just washed down, or is this there? It's in the desert and the sand just blew in for no.
oh
I
right,
find it
well,
hard to believe that there's 12 feet of sand blew in and
again,
nobody
where did the
noticed their
sand come
city
from?
was being wrecked. Huh?
Where did the sand come from? Like,
Yeah,
where do you?
that's what
How do
I'm
you get
asking.
sand?
That's what I'm asking. So is it pre-flood, and then it's all bullshit, you know?
No, I mean, it's all flood to me. It's all flood or post flood. All this damage, everything is all messed up now. Because like to me, the only way you get sand is to have like water, or like an ocean or something, like stuff that makes sand. Like all all the little rocks and pebbles and all the shells from all the creatures that have shells. This is the sand, right?
Hmm.
So, but I've seen all the top of Africa looks like once upon a time. I mean, they say that the top of Africa was once green. Well, maybe it was, and then it looks to me like a giant wave just like smacked the crap out of it, and it just deposited like retarded amounts of sand. Like, I don't know, but then again, like some of these layers are created because of the flood, like the White Cliffs of Dover. Like, how do you get such a huge chalk level if they're talking about like that's how chalk comes from, like all these little tiny microorganisms dying? I could believe it, but you have them all in one spot and they're all dying in one spot, It's all just still a giant massive flood. The only way you could get a layer that thick is to have everything be covered. And that's like if you look at your science classes, they say maybe Stacy biology or something. They talk about the dinosaurs. What is the name of the era that they say where like all the like sea
Cambrian,
life exploded or something? Like isn't it like
Cambrian.
Cambrian explosion? There you go. So, but I think the Cambrian explosion, like sure, I believe that happened, but it was the year that the whole earth was under the floodwaters. Like that's why there was an explosion, because everything was underwater. There was nothing but ocean, right? So of course you would have a ridiculous amount of these creatures getting spawned, because there's like all the extra food. Like just think about the sheer amount of stuff. Like trees, pre-flood trees. They're all like all get marked. They're all underwater, like all of that. Like there's going to be giant floating mats of things. Like so, you didn't even need really like the insects to be on the ark because they could have had their own kind of ark, just dead mats of floating logs and stuff. But any people that were trying to survive on there would have eventually died because it would have eventually sank, and yeah, there'd be no way of getting food.
Yeah, it's hard to even quite imagine it.
Yeah, it is actually. I can't imagine what Noah had to go through if it was a real story.
Are you kidding me? Is that where we're going now?
I'm pretty sure it's a real story. Like, I'm not arguing that.
Who is?
Well, there are tons of people that do that.
Not here though, right?
No,
Yeah.
not that.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, you don't want to believe it, but I thought we were in something new again.
Yeah. But no, seriously, if I give
See,
you
I
that,
believe that everything that's written in the Word actually happened for the most part, right? I believe that it all happened, but I believe there's other codes so much written in there. You know, covenantal.
right?
Could be numbers. Could be any kind of code.
Well, that's kind
I
of my
think.
thing. Like, you
I
have
just
to.
think we just touched the tip.
Mhm. Like, you can't tell me about Sodom and Gomorrah if Sodom and Gomorrah isn't something that actually happened. Like, you can't threaten me with like burning my hand on the stove if the stove doesn't exist, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's same as
Like, the reason you told me the stove, like, why? Don't put your hand on that. Why not? Because you'll burn.
Mhm. Well, you guys, I have to go to sleep. I got a
You had to
job
go to sleep
tomorrow.
an hour ago.
Yeah,
What?
it's late.
What time is it?
12:18.
Here.
Oh, it's kind of early then, I guess, isn't it? Well, you know what? I think time is going to change pretty soon for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We're gonna get this stupid daylight savings. Can anybody tweet Donald Trump and make him
Oh,
stop?
you know why they're not going to change it?
Why not?
Because it's going to affect the airlines too much.
What? Really?
Well, that's what I heard.
Money involved.
So silly.
Yeah. Come on, get
change our systems.
yeah.
Really?
Get your little text on the computer. It shouldn't take much. Yeah. You can scam us. Do you know what 500 miles away is one city that we always go to, right? Do you know what it cost us to go return? Think of a place where you're at and what it cost you to go there and back. It's an hour flight. Guess how much? $700.
Holy wow, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, they just hose us. We got no competition. We got two airlines in Canada pretty well. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't even like to fly with them anymore. WestJet and Air Canada, you suck.
But I mean, honestly, like, who's really gonna be like, you know what I want to do today? I want to start an airline company and just like start it from the ground up. Like, that doesn't happen anymore.
Well,
Why
they
not?
usually get bought out, right?
Well, that too.
They start making a profit and they get bought out. You either
Yeah.
sell it to us, we're gonna burn you to the ground.
Yeah, if you don't, then you're doomed.
Yeah. So really, there's no argument. All right, guys.
Yeah, before you go,
What
you gonna take that book or what?
what
Did you
book
read
is it?
Would you read it?
Good night, guys.
I don't know. What? What, Stacy?
Oh no, he said he left. But anyway, the
Oh,
book.
what is it?
It's a book by James Brayshaw
I might.
about the
But
Satan.
you can't pressure me to read it because you know what, I only read like a book every couple of years unless when I go to Mexico, then I read. Lay on the beach and read a book.
Fair enough. So
Is there a
you're saying
PDF online?
don't send you the book. No, I can get you a free copy of the book. Email it to you. You just have to email it.
Oh yeah, PDF stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can maybe you know,
Check it out.
you're get Satan savvy, you know.
Well, I mean, I see both sides of it. I understand both sides. I do. And I'm not sure myself, you know,
Fair enough.
because there's a lot of questions that you can't answer. And there's a lot of questions. Well, I haven't listened to his side enough, but
Hmm.
the spiritual aspect of it and can't be answered by your side. It's all just denied. And that's what bothers me the most. It's not answering my questions. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. All right,
Yeah.
well, I guess I'll catch you next time.
Yeah. On Monday.
Yep.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too. Good night.